Happy Liberation Day.
Rosa, I feel so liberated from my shackles. I woke up this morning and immediately there was something different in the air. I looked around and I said, you know what? No more. You know what I don't deserve today? Treats. No more treats for me today. Treats.
I read a really good zine from our guest about how consumer culture needs to stop.
Oh boy.
And Donald Trump clearly read that zine too.
Most certainly.
That's all.
Consumer culture. Fucking Switch 2. More like Switch. Who cares?
It is crazy that the Switch 2 is the first big target of the terrorists.
Yeah.
They could not have planned a worse casualty. Like it. Oh, it was beautiful to watch people be excited at the same time.
$500, $100 more than it is in Japan, allegedly because of the tariffs.
No, my treats! Donkey Kong is gonna be.
The Nintendo uprising is gonna spread among Gen Alpha when they siege the capital.
There's gonna be a prison uprising of all of the Smash players that got put up on a certain type of charge.
There's going to be the next January 6th, instead of Jacob Chansley and his fucking buffalo head or whatever, it's going to be somebody in like a Mario mascot costume.
It'll be trans chicks that play Melee.
Laying siege to the Capitol. Anyway, you probably heard a voice with us today. That is Gare Davis of Cool Zone Media. Cool writer, journalist, podcaster.
They do journalism. They're not a journalist. God, we've been over this. Jordan,
I know.
God.
Words have meanings. This is the objective truth that Matt Walsh is always talking about. The truth in words matters, and I'm trying to learn the ways. But Gare, how are you?
Not good.
It's Liberation Day.
I don't know. I'm managing as best as I can. Yeah, I don't know. I'm still kicking.
The way. Yeah, I think that's how most people kind of feel or have been dealing. Is that almost, especially queer people, if you go and you ask them, "Hey, how are you doing?" Like, just, hey, what's going on with you? Even if it's the most casual this is something I've noticed. Even if you're trying to have a casual conversation with a queer person and you're just politely asking it, like, everybody is so encumbered by the state of the world that it's just like, woof, therapy time. Am I right?
No, I graduated. I don't need that anymore. Instead, I self-regulate with healthy coping.
What do you do to cope? What's your healthy coping mechanism? Share your wisdom.
I get asked this a lot, actually. I don't know. I think a lot. I process my feelings. I have arguments in the shower to nobody. I write letters that I don't send to people. I do a lot of writing that helps externalize my thoughts. And I look at yaoi, although sometimes that's a double-edged sword, because when I feel bad, sometimes when I look at yaoi, it makes me feel even more hollow and alone, but sometimes it makes me feel good and happy. So it's like dangerous.
This is that kind of shit that philosophers talked about. This is that deep yaoi business that Aristotle was on, I'm pretty sure.
All that you gotta do, queer people, are you sad? Fuck bitches. Do K. Do ice.
Do not. This is not legal advice. Nope, we cannot recommend that people do K and or ice.
All beeped out, don't worry.
I don't even know what ice is. So I'm good.
Ice is nice.
This is why I only do yaoi, something that is currently legal, even though I think some states are trying to ban it.
No more
yeah. I think Texas has been trying to ban it for
Texas
a while now.
Specifically, yeah. They don't want those pretty boys. Sad.
Now, would you like to explain to our audience what yaoi is?
No.
Okay.
It's either self-explanatory or it's not.
Well,
yeah, I feel like people should know.
Oh no, dude.
It's need to know information, I guess.
You're on need to know basis.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, Liberation Day. Wow.
Yeah, what a
34% tariffs against China, 20% tariffs against the EU, Vietnam, Thailand. Like every country has been hit with a 10% flat tariff rate. Numbers are all over the place. But
I saw a somebody from Jamaica commenting on it and being like, "What the fuck? Jamaica's already like economically in shambles. What are you? America's one of the only like trading partners with Jamaica. What the fuck are you guys doing?" And I feel like that's going to be a lot of the world, especially come tomorrow.
He's implementing a Kim Jong-il style economic policy. Would you like to give your analysis on that, Gare?
You know, luckily we outsourced most of our tariff information to my co-host Mia Wong, who now hosts our ongoing segment Tariff Talk on It Could Happen Here. The tariffs are, from what I know, not good.
And you're an economist.
I'm not an economist.
You are an economist.
Thankfully not. That's why I read Yowie instead of econ papers. But we have some indication based on a journalist named James Serdowicki. I'm butchering that. About where some of these tariff numbers are being pulled from. It looks like
rates and
it looks like they're not actually calculating tariff rates versus non-tariff rate barriers as they claimed. It looks like the admin just took our trade deficit with each of these countries and divided it by that country's exports to us, which, from what I'm told, is bad and not a good way to do tariff. For instance, we have like an almost 18 billion trade deficit with Indonesia, and its exports to us are about 28 billion, which is 64%. If you divide those numbers, which is what Trump claims the tariff rate for Indonesia is for like what they charge us. So the reciprocal tariff is at that same rate, but that's not the actual tariff rate from Indonesia. We're making up these numbers. It's completely fake math.
He's on some German idealism type shit. He read Fichte and then he went nuts.
So, not good.
So you're doing that thing where you reference stuff nobody else has read again.
No, except the people will know.
Like two of the people. You can't say the people and it's everybody.
Whatever.
Some of the people.
I reject quote unquote the people as a coherent political class.
The masses.
So, actually,
the proletarian masses who toil away in the factory.
The people are going to be so mad about their treats, though.
Dude, okay. Treat watch. Snickers bar going way up.
I'm genuinely interested in. I think this is going to be the true litmus test because every midwit liberal and every mainstream Democrat pundit has been talking. Like the talking point is going to be that it has a disastrous term and everything's been the economy's been bad. But like, no, this is actually going to be the true litmus test of. Not because we kind of already know the Democrats won't do much, but how much the public opinion on Trump is going to turn even more than it already has. And I'm wondering, like, what do you see as the just kind of immediate outcome of stuff like this, or is that kind of in your purview? And is anybody in your sphere kind of reacting to this? What are they saying on that?
Are you asking me this question?
Yeah.
Honestly, this isn't my purview.
No, you're totally okay.
Yeah, I mean, I like political extremism. Bad sentence. I
Me
like
too.
studying
Nope,
it.
clip it.
I
That's
like
going in the
studying. I like studying it because it's simple and it's easy to understand. This economy thing is like fucking magic. It's fake and gay. Versus understanding political extremists, very easy. So that's why I focus my writing on the far right and occasionally the phantom of the quote unquote far left.
Ooh, can you analyze me?
Do
Do you understand me?
No,
we would
the
be
fucking-
here all day.
the fucking like neocon, neo-lib, new right tariff like econ stuff. It's just like with the libertarian faction of the right.
No,
Getting upset at breaking fair trade versus you have like Vance and Trump trying to justify these tariffs as trying to enforce fair trade in the long run. It's all very goofy and very vibes based, and this is the one thing in politics that I have a really hard time like keeping up with and understanding, which is why I let my coworker do it.
Damn.
So that's not helpful at all.
Fuck, we're
No, I think-
asking the wrong questions.
No, here's the thing: is I think it actually is helpful because one of the things I've really noticed, because I don't write constantly on it, but for streaming and for analysis purposes, I keep up with a lot of the same spaces that you do, and I think that's kind of how we came into each other's Twitter orbit. And I think there has been this broad vibe shift on the right, in these spaces. That people like Steve Bannon, people like Stephen Miller are probably running in and looking at online, and part of it I think has to do with Elon kind of coming into the picture, and that nesting with all of this crypto bullshit. Like the amount of people who are suddenly like super big into Trump, and also like I was watching the stream. Somebody at CNN or whoever the hell was streaming the White House announcement of the tariffs. Yeah. And there were a ton of people in the replies going like, MAGA, make America great again, in the same breath going
totally
to the moon and Bitcoin and Doge and all this other dumb bullshit. And I think there's this memification of the economy that feels like it's just them getting in lockstep with whatever the messaging is.
Yeah, I mean, I can understand this. Absolutely. Like, there's a few factors going into this. Trump crashing the economy is just another way to own the libs in a way, and like punishment and hard times are part of what Trump was promising when he promised like retribution for all of the ways that like the establishment TM has harmed him, and these tariffs and these tariffs attack this like globalist establishment, right? This like new neoliberal order that the Democrats have been ushering in the past 20 years, even though it's basically Bill Clinton and Margaret Thatcher having a baby. Which I would love to see that. So you have a part of this that is like right-wingers being okay with these like hard times because they think it's like part of this like long-term revenge plan that will eventually save the economy. Meanwhile, you have Trump and the admin trying to use this messaging of like all these countries are secretly like ripping us off, right? All of these countries via the trade policies, like we've been like uplifting the entire world as they like steal money from us via these trade deals. So this is like another form of like retribution. Is doing these reciprocal tariffs, even though the numbers don't even make sense and don't add up. But it's like getting revenge for like having to like pay for the world's alimony, child support for the past like 20-40 years.
And you have to consider the fact that the class interests that go behind this policy, which is creating a recession, is good for big business.
And good for conservatives.
These corporate syndicates benefit when there's like a huge 2008, 2020 style recession, and they're able to buy up all of these undervalued assets that have to sell as a result of the economic downturn, leading to a further centralization of capital. It's just sort of these tariffs are acting as sort of a accelerator on these economic patterns of boom busts and the American slow downfall that we've been seeing anyway, just sped way the fuck up.
Well, and the crypto connection that was mentioned earlier, it's like there's this growing distrust among libertarians about like U.S. Treasury bonds, how there's not actually gold in Fort Knox. Our entire economy is this like scam. So instead, they're putting all their money from like outside the stock market into crypto, right? So they're hoping that even if the stock market affects negatively to these tariffs, crypto will continue to surge. So
and it
I think
will.
that is a perception driving some of this, which you're seeing even amongst like the free trade libertarians who are maybe like anti-tariff, like ideologically, but are okay if like stock goes down because then they believe crypto will go up. And they're all putting their money into like meme coins and crypto and all that kind of stuff.
It likely will keep going up just because crypto stays valuable as long as people think of it as valuable. NFTs lost value simply because people started thinking of them as worthless assets. So then that went down. It's not based on anything material. It's just hullabaloo, which is the stock market generally. It's just that
it's
legitimize it more.
Yeah. When the mind does start to boggle when you consider the amount of interest that has come into crypto and the stock market and how they are kind of in so many ways just the same shit.
Oh yeah, the only reason people act like the crypto thing is different is because at first it wasn't these big corporate syndicates backing crypto. It was like much smaller entities behind cryptocurrency, which is why it was seen as, and it still in many ways is, a illegitimate asset that's used only for gambling and buying drugs.
Well, and so, Gare, I guess kind of you mentioned earlier how the economy, and we just kind of kicked that off because, like Rosa said, it's Liberation Day.
Liberation Day.
Oh, boy. But what is you mentioned following online extremism, writing about those dickheads. Kind of what is your beat for everybody who doesn't know you by your work? And how's it looking out there? Because it's, oh boy.
My beat is broad and ever changing. I first started doing research into local Nazis in my, state, city, neighborhood as a teenager, because I was that kind of kid. I then eventually.
You were bald.
No, I was just odd. And secretly autistic. So that's kind of how this whole thing started. And then as non-government extremist groups became more and more linked up with the Trump administration in 2019, 2020, and then eventually in the whole Republican Party now, that focus on extremist politics just became a focus on politics in general, because I think even the term right-wing extremist is kind of useless now, because the quote-unquote right-wing extremists that we talked about 7 years ago are now just the mainstream Republican Party people. Mm-hmm. So they're not even extreme compared to other people in the party, so I know I've been getting just more into general political coverage. I was at the RNC last year. That was a hoot. And then I also enjoy is a weird word, but enjoy keeping tabs on the right-wing content machine, which oddly enough is actually doing pretty bad right now, because it turns out they thrive when there's a Democrat president that they can rally anger around, and they don't do well when their side is actually in control, because they rely on being victims. They rely on this outrage culture that when they actually win, it's not really good for their business.
And I mean, the other reason, we're seeing the Daily Wire bankruptcy
exactly
right now, right? And the other main reason is the fact that the right wing quote unquote counterculture isn't a guy in a suit and tie and yarmulke anymore. It's people that complain about guys in suits and ties with yarmulkes, which is why we see so many of the big far right pundits now breaking away from this neocon bent and just
The
sort
new
of
right.
grifting off of illegitimately off of anti-Zionism to just push anti-Semitic narratives. And
I mean,
shit like that.
Like the neo-reactionary like movement has grown so much and gained so much power the past year, especially with Musk's involvement in the Trump administration. That's like one of the new big vectors, right? Like
and J.D. Vance with Curtis Yarvin,
exactly,
and, Nick Land,
as an adjacent figure. You know, you have groups like, you know, Patriot Front or Proud Boys who are less relevant now. We'll see if they gain relevancy now that, you know, some of those guys are out of prison because they've been mass pardoned. But like, they don't even, like, we're not even seeing much movement in that side. That could be in part due to them just kind of taking a victory lap right now. And, you know, in 2026, 2027, that they might have like regrown their appetite for like street action. But also, like, in their perspective, they're winning so much. Like, Trump has done so much of like the conservative wet dream for the past like 4 years. He's enacted so much of it, more than anyone really thought he could, because he's just basically doing a judicial or because he's essentially doing a coup of the government from the inside and negating the judicial and legislative branches.
Because he understands political power. He's not a liberal if he doesn't believe in the sacredness of the Constitution.
At least the people who work under him have that more explicit understanding. He just does what he wants, and now there's less people telling him no, right? Which I think is like the big factor. He would have wanted to do this stuff in 2017. The people he just surrounded himself with were more institutionalists, so that didn't happen. Now he's surrounded purely by cultists and people who like want a unitary executive authority over the entire country. So it's weird because, like, you know, I used to do like like Nazis, Proud Boys, accelerationists when that was like a thing, and now so much of that ideology has been synthesized into like the 200 people who are running the entirety of the federal government, and like the neo-reactionary movement, which is boosted by like Silicon Valley and like tech guys. So that's kind of been the focus of a lot of my like extra digging the past few months.
I appreciate the specificity of your analysis, because I feel like a lot of these conversations have a tendency to devolve into shoving the Trump admin, this square peg, into a round-shaped hole of 20th century dictators that doesn't really seem to
it's
fit.
not applicable at all. This is so 21st century.
Yeah, no, which is why I get in hot water for this, but like, Trump is not a fascist. He's far, far, far different to a fascist. He is very
It's a new thing.
Yes, it is very distinctly a new thing, because it's not like it's weird to say. In many senses, Mussolini is to Trump's left. In a lot of economic senses, he's not an economic populist in the way that these 20th century fascists were, and that's not an endorsement in any way. It's just a matter of rhetoric and of these early political goals. Would you agree with that?
I mean, in broad strokes, I guess so. Like, I definitely think he is a new thing. I think it's generally not super helpful to try to just endlessly imply old models onto our current situation. Like, this is so based on the tech industry, digital culture, derealization, meme culture, like 21st century authoritarian politics. It's very, it's in some ways very like Putin-esque. There's this like, you know, air of like traditionalism and like orthodoxy, but in like this like almost like uncanny kitschified American way, right?
Yeah,
it doesn't have like the polished Catholic Orthodox aesthetics of like the Russian traditionalists.
Yeah, which I mean, that's what it always was. It was always kitschy. I mean, you watch a Riefenstahl film, and the German ideal is white marble statue that they imported from halfway across the world that wasn't white marble to begin with. It's chasing a shadow that was never there.
So we are trying to find like a new understanding or a new word or a new term, and I'm not sure how useful that'll be in the short term, right? This may just be a thing that becomes easier upon retrospect. I think we will look back on this decade as like, this the same way we would refer to like, the Germany in the 30s or the Soviet Union in the 90s, or like the fall of the Soviet Union, right?
Yeah.
I think we will look back upon America in the 2020s as like America in the 2020s, like when that thing happened, when our federal government tried to be or was successfully dismantled by this reality show businessman and his friends of like tech cronies.
Well, and I think it doesn't help that Trump, and I've said this a lot before, but Trump does not care about so much of this shit as much as the people around him do. Is the thing
certainly now, yeah.
And I think that's where people get into, okay, well, Trump is a fascist. Like, no, but I think it's fair to say that Stephen Miller is a fucking fascist.
Totally.
Bannon is a fascist.
No, Trump is a narcissistic opportunist who'll do anything to increase his own power the same way he would with his businesses. Frankly, ideally, he might be more similar even to like an anarcho-capitalist in some ways.
These things all intersect.
Totally.
Because
Miller certainly has strong fascist leanings. People like Walsh who are openly fascists or like fantasize about fascism, even if it's not really applicable to 2025, but they're still going to jerk off at the idea.
Yes. I mean, at the end of the day, what it just comes back to is the biggest connection between these 20th century movements and today is that it's the open dictatorship of the capitalist class, not hiding behind the pretexts of a liberal democratic structure. I mean, this class dictatorship was always there, but it's just being made more explicit.
No, I think that's why like the term I've been using is like the CEO monarchy is what they really want. It's like specifically Trump and specifically Elon. They want essentially a monarch to act as the CEO of a country and have the country operate as a corporation. Like that riffs on Yarvin, and I think mainly because of like Trump and Musk's experience as businessmen. That's like the model that they're trying to use. And like Musk just wants complete control of the world because he thinks he's the smartest, most powerful man ever, and no one should have the audacity to stop him. So he'll do whatever he can just to try to run the world, even if that sacrifices quote unquote democracy or whatever.
Well, yeah.
No, he truly believes in like not only the great man theory, but that he is like the greatest among men.
No, he's such like he's so scared of like this like existentialist like conception of himself that like he has to achieve a form of immortality by launching humanity onto other planets, and the only thing stopping that in his mind is governments right now. So he has to first undermine government in order for him to like satisfy his like egotistical existential crisis about the future of humanity. Like he's a delusional drug addict who's
it's
now
almost
in partial control of government. Very Randy, of course.
It's a mess of all of these different things. It's such an interesting phenomenon if you're able to remove yourself from the horror of living it, to just look at the craziness of it all.
I mean,
of waking up in the morning to your alarm clock radio saying that it's Liberation Day. Also, Japan, China, and South Korea are in a united trading bloc.
The fucking Pan Asian Alliance.
Some guy.
What?
The
only thing Trump has accomplished is uniting China, Japan, and South Korea.
Part of the deal, baby.
The first time
away from the U.S. Canada, I think, is going to join the EU within the year. What the fuck is... It's amazing. I wake up, that alarm clock plays a Hoi 4 event for me every single morning. Off of the Jazz Radio News Hour. I love it.
more anarchists should have voted for Trump if they knew he was going to completely destabilize American dominance in the global sphere.
My leftcom soldiers, my Bordigist army, get out there, vote Republican in the primaries, vote.
Oh man, no, it is wild, and like some of like the disassociation to recognize the absurdity of that is like a way to cope.
Oh yeah.
It has varying degrees of success, but that's certainly like what I fall back on in most cases, probably.
Yeah, that's why I could never do your job, and I have a lot of respect for the political commentators because it's all very easy to make fun of. The jokes write themselves, but like the covering the day by day is an incredibly fucking bleak thing. I don't know how do you stay like on track? Do you have to put up a barrier between your own perception of reality and the news, where you're almost covering it as if it is a story happening out of a book?
It depends on the topic. There's certain instances where that type of like separation does like help get the work done or helps make the work like more accessible. But sometimes taking a more personal lens is preferable, honestly. Like, so like it kind of depends. Like, it's hard to separate that out, especially when I cover like trans stuff. I can't really separate that out from like my lived experience.
Yeah.
I think I might even separate it more than others, but that's just kind of how my autism work. So I don't know. It's weird because so much of my work life and personal life just blends together into this like sludge of politic. Like I never really know when I'm on work or off work. There's certainly instances where I'm like on like the past few hours that you've been trying to reach me, where I've been busy writing about student deportations. But there's other instances where like I'm just trying to like keep up with like news and like take notes and like understand what's happening, where like that like blends into like having dinner with my friends, where I'm like, sorry, I have to like do this thing on my phone because I need to like add this note for later. And it does kind of invade, I guess. But I don't know. I think frankly I do like an okay job sorting through the chaos, but I don't really have anything to compare that to.
Would you say autism is a superpower? Or is your superpower?
Probably not.
Yeah, that would be a really corny thing to say. I'm glad you didn't fall for that bit.
No, I probably wouldn't say that.
Yeah, that would suck if you said that.
Reddit's down the hall and to the left.
Yeah, I know. That was a bait for me to make fun of you, so I'm glad that you didn't take that.
Nice try. Better next time.
So you brought up Elon a bit, and that might be a perfect segue into what happened in Wisconsin. With Wisconsin. Might be the clear, and this is saying actually I think a lot, while also not saying much, but might be the clearest attempt we've seen at just blatantly buying an election.
Totally.
That also fell completely flat.
It completely backfired. It created such a negative polarization against Musk that there was like a 10 to 12 point swing away from the Republicans compared to the presidential election, like massive return changes. And this negative polarization is really getting to him. You saw a smaller version of this with like the German election and AfD, but the Musk's effect on that was more minimal, maybe like 1 or 2 points. But this thing in Wisconsin really backfired. And they're like reassessing Musk as like a reliable political asset now. They were really counting on this to work, and when it didn't, like he's not getting kicked out immediately, and his special government employee designation expires in like a month or so anyway. But he's probably going to take a back foot on some of this campaigning now, according to some reporting coming out of the White House. Yeah,
they wanted him to have this cult of personality that's not there because, frankly, he's just
because his personality sucks.
He's
off-putting.
Freak. Like,
he's off-putting, yeah.
I know, and I know people are the rebel is always like, oh, that's ableism, that's ableism. Sorry, but like, don't pick that guy.
It has nothing to do with like anybody who tells you it's ableism to make fun of him. Like, you can be socially awkward. Man, I know tons of autistic people. I'm ADHD. I know tons of socially awkward people who are not the bizarre, mewling little skin bags that Elon Musk is.
No, because he had his brain rotted by becoming the most powerful man in the world. And when you have that much money and you have like your attention span completely destroyed and you do that much ketamine every day, it ruins you as a person. He got so used to being so loved by everyone for like 20 years that the first time people like kind of turned on him was like, hey, this was odd when he called that diver a pedophile. It was the first time he got like significant pushback. When that happened, it just broke his brain, realizing that there could be upwards of millions of people that now don't like him. It shattered him as a person, and he's been pushing further and further to the right ever since then. And he's just lost the capability to even be a real social human. He is isolated himself away from like humanity.
Yeah, and like there are like these anytime you hear from anyone that's close to him that's willing to speak anonymously about the way he behaves whenever he gets an L like this, he acts like a 13-year-old girl that works at Hot Topic. He just spirals out of control into like this teenage hormonal temper tantrum of suicidality and drugs and self-harm. It's profoundly pathetic.
Yeah,
like
when he was booed at that comedy special with Dave Chappelle, right? And he was allegedly put on suicide watch that night because he never had that much of like a negative in-person reaction to his presence, with the whole stadium of people booing him.
He's such a
it like shattered his like sense of self. So he's like a deeply fragile man who doesn't like understand what being like a real human is anymore, and it's mostly his own fault.
You can't be a figurehead while also being a massive, oversensitive, whiny little bitch. Because say what you want about Trump,
Trump gets it.
He pulls it off. He has W Riz, Elon Musk, L Aura, not good, bad.
Well, and I think there's also this element where I think Elon wants to, or at least believes that by being in such close proximity to Trump, like maybe some of that Trump magic will wipe off on him, or in the same way where Trump was like convinced, even though it wasn't actually true, but like he put out the idea during his first term that like, oh, anybody he backed was a winner. He was only backing the winning horses. That's why you saw him like during elections during his first term, he would back off after candidates lost after he endorsed them. But I think Elon has like tried to like get some of that through osmosis, or believes that he has, which is why he's going so hard in all these like what the fuck is the common outside of, you know, conservative politics and nationalism and all that shit, but like what is the commonality between fucking going on stage for the AFD and then coming back to America for a Wisconsin Supreme Court nominee? Like, it is just that he wants to be in that world, I think. Like, he wants to have that defining aspect that he just so clearly lacks in a wild way.
And the thing is that it would all be way more effective, and is more effective when it's just tunneled through super PACs and dark money behind the scenes to rig elections, which we've seen all across the country.
Oh, yeah.
That's way more effective, except he is a weirdo, narcissistic douchebag who wants that applause at the personal level. Which...
No, because I think that fundamentally, like, that framing misunderstands why he's even using his money that way. Because like he initially was planning just to do like dark money funneling back in like early 2024. That was what he was going to do. He did not want his name like publicly on the donation list. He was timing his donations so that people would not realize he was donating to Trump until after the election. But then he realized he could just buy his way to being cool, or so he thought. He has all these resources and he can't understand how to be a person. He does have negative riz, as you said. So instead, he's using his resources to just buy his way to that position because he's used to getting anything he wants. And this thing has been so hard for him to get his whole life. Like this part of being like in the club necessarily, I guess. Like, despite his like status in like pre 2017 as like like the cool billionaire, as soon as that slipped, he's been trying to like buy his way back into that any way he can, and he kind of exhausted his options among like liberalism, so now he's moving on to this untapped demographic of conservatism, and he's trying to buy his way to being this like conservative demagogue.
When that doesn't work out, I hope he backs me next. I hope I'm one of his next. That'd be lit. That'd be fucking awesome. I don't know. I think it all goes back to his daddy issues. As stupid as it sounds.
Psychoanalysis moment.
Yeah, no, I'm getting Freudian in this bitch. Get me a cigar, get me some mouth cancer. God damn, his dad hates him.
Oh yeah, his dad fucking
His
loves
dad hates
so
him. And I think that's like a bit of why we're seeing him want this cult of personality around him that doesn't exist in as broad of a scale as he would have liked. As lib-coded as it is of me to say.
No, it's like it is. No, it would be lib-coded if you called him like fucking Elmo or whatever the fuck.
Elongated muskrat. Yeah. Deport Musk. I hate minority groups and immigrants if they're bad ones and conservative.
Well, and speaking of, so Gary, you've been looking at the student deportations. The way in which the admin has gone about the deportation thing, like everything else, has been very bull in a china shop. It started, a month ago now with Mahmoud Khalil, which was like a galling display that I feel like every activist, every person on the left had been warning that shit like this was going to happen. And it was met with this... you know who Brianna Wu is, right?
Unfortunately.
Yeah, same. It was met with this kind of like apathy from a lot of the like the Zionist Democrat contingent of just like, well, I get, like that they were working with Hamas or whatever the fuck they wanted to label it as to justify this. But like I said, like everything else the administration has done, it is just so rapidly accelerated to a point where, which is kind of what everybody was speculating was going to happen when they started like day one loading planes full of dozens, if not hundreds of people without any kind of process, without any kind of oversight. People were like, what do you mean? Like, what is going to happen to these people's families? What if there is somebody in there who's like, there needs to be some kind of process here?
Yeah, just gathering up brown people for being brown, and they're...
Well, and we've seen I kind of want to ask you about, which I realize if you've been writing about it all day is probably not the most fun subject to broach, but I kind of want to ask you about the current state of what are, like, I have no problem calling them just abductions. They're extrajudicial abductions. Yeah. And have you been in contact, or have you talked to any like lawyers who are representing these people? Have you talked to anybody on the ground or found anybody during your research who has any kind of hope? Because it seems like a very earnestly terrifying and hopeless situation.
I mean, I am talking with people. Hope is hard to come by. Everyone's trying to like wait it out and like see how some of these court cases progress. Like specifically, trying to revoke someone's green card for like First Amendment activity is pretty like new. They're really testing the limits of immigration law.
It's
for some of these people,
1789 law, right? The Alien Enemies Act that they're using as a
that's not even the one that they're using for the students. They're using that for the Venezuelan immigrants and Haitian immigrants and people alleged to be MS-13 gang members. What they're doing with students refers to this like a Cold War era, like rarely used statute that allows the Secretary of State to revoke visas and maybe even green cards for people if they pose a foreign policy risk. So that's what they're going to have to argue in court. For some people, like a student named, let me pull this up. Actually, it's right here. like a student named Yoon Sound Chung, who's a permanent resident. She was able to evade ICE detention and is currently in hiding as her court case progresses. She launched a countersuit. Alleging that ICE's actions against her are unconstitutional and illegal. But there's other people, like, as you mentioned, Mahmoud Khalil, who was going to be in ICE detention for the remainder of this court proceeding. Others have elected to self-deport or to, flee to Canada or Europe, some of which... And some of those cases will still progress as they are out of the country, but many more are being held in ICE detention. Specifically, there's I think around 5 people in the Louisiana ICE facility right now who have had their green cards or visas revoked and are awaiting due process.
And have you? No doubt you've come across talk of the conditions that people are being held in. I'm sure you've heard of the Florida detention facility that is apparently just overrun with people right now. And it is essentially a concentration camp. There's no two ways about it, I feel.
Yeah, I mean, these detention facilities have been just this bad the past 4 years. They have been really just as full the past 4 years. The facilities and ICE as an agency itself is always really inhumane no matter who the president is. I think specifically kind of the wider net that they're using right now is kind of what separates ICE's actions and the Trump administration from the last administration in terms of who they are going after in regards to Venezuelan immigrants, Haitian immigrants who were legally here, people who had even legal asylum claims, or were allowed as refugees who are now deemed illegal, or these 15 or so students or scholars who are currently getting processed by ICE. And Rubio's claim there's 300 at least visas that he has revoked, and we will see ICE do more and more targeting on those as the weeks continue. So it's at scale and targeting. I mean, the ICE facilities are always really nasty conditions, and my colleague, a journalist named James Stout, has been reporting on that the past 4 years under Biden.
That goes all the way back to Obama, right?
Yeah. I mean, they have always been bad.
Yes,
ICE as an agency has always been the freakiest worst out of all of the federal law enforcement, especially the immigration enforcement.
That's a high bar, but perhaps.
I mean, it's a high bar, but it is one that is very easily met by the fact that ICE's sole purpose since inception has been the explicit maintenance of nationalism, of the American state, and crushing any kind of dissent that would impact that, or that can be. It's an enforcement arm, it always has been.
Specifically, it's an enforcement arm that goes after people that do not even need to be criminals or have criminal charges, right? Remaining in the United States after your visa expires is not a crime. Most of all of the students, all the student protesters they have gone after so far, they don't have criminal charges. They're not charging these people with crimes. They are only claiming that they're foreign policy risks. But these people aren't being charged with anything. So it's a law enforcement agency that can go after people without there even being a crime there, and that's, I think, another thing that makes ICE special.
And the thing is that so much of what they're doing right now, it's almost an inevitability that it works its way up to the Supreme Court, and we know the makeup of that court.
Yeah.
So
that court has been having some of the members have been flip-flopping a little bit. There's not been the stark Trump loyalty from some Supreme Court members that Republicans were hoping for. I'm not saying that there's hope in the Supreme Court. It is always a risk to get things to that level. But I think in regards to what hope there is, it's that the statutes that they're using are outlandish and rarely used, and in certain district courts, certainly, they are quote unquote unlikely to proceed the way the government wants. But it's still right. Like we're not saying like this like definitely won't work, right? Like that's we don't know. We really don't know. But lawyers are going to do their job and try to protect the rights of these people, and the results of that we're all going to find out together.
So, what do you think? I mean, from this point, like, how do you see any of the structures, particularly around, like ICE and these detention facilities? Like, how does somebody, a regular person, even try to start fighting that or dismantling that or approaching anything dismantling that?
You know, as shocking as it may be, I don't know if I have a foolproof answer on how to single-handedly dismantle ICE.
Yeah, well, okay, so that's not what I meant. That's
no, sure, no, I know what you mean, but like just as like a as like a starter, obviously, it's tough. I mean, like legal resources, legal campaigns, you know, those things are being utilized by these students right now. I would say like mitigation is more the thing that people are probably going to end up adopting. So like for instance, if you know someone who is on a student visa who was arrested at a Palestine protest, that person needs to know that they're probably going to be imminently targeted by ICE, and you might want to start legal proceedings proactively to try to prevent that. Similarly, people who have never been arrested but have been the targets of far-right Zionist doxing campaigns by organizations like Canary Mission, they have also been targeted by ICE. Almost like they're using these Canary Mission lists as like they're like lists of people to go after. So like those are like the two main vectors right now for people being targeted is if you were arrested or if you have been doxed by these like harassment campaigns. And whether you're a green card holder, whether you're on a visa, that seems to be the main thing that they're using as justification to go after these people right now. So you have someone like Ms. Chung who's gone into hiding. Whereabouts are unknown as lawyers fight for her rights in court. And, you know, doing things alone are always hard. It's good to know that you have people in solidarity with you who are going to help you out. It's good to have understanding of like OPSEC and like security. This is all like pretty like basic stuff, whether that comes down to like digital hygiene or physical security. Like, so like these are like much like broader topics regarding like how people are doing this currently, which is like, that's like the only thing I can like, you know, comment on or talk about is like what I'm seeing people employ that seems to be working somewhat. I think specifically what's happening with Yoon Sao Chung is the most interesting example, where you have someone hiding in the Southern District of New York from ICE, and their lawyers are working the case while continuing to remain in hiding. So it's not like a foolproof thing. It's mitigation, and you don't know how long that's going to last. But having an understanding of where the threat is coming from, and what people are currently doing to mitigate that threat is like this first steps. Like always, I think like threat assessment is the most important thing. Just like at least to start with.
Rosa, did you have something you wanted to ask?
Do you have a friend to your left there?
Oh, my cat. Yes, this is Ryuzaki.
Hello.
He's sleeping, or he was sleeping. Now he's rolling around.
That's nice. What a nice cat. How old is she or he?
I think almost 5. Almost 5 now.
Oh wow, that's nice. What's your take on the Let America Flow Act? I mean, Donald Trump, he's letting the water pipes flow.
Is this what he's doing in California? That's dumping the water into the Pacific Ocean?
Oh yeah. Fuck.
No, what is this?
No, he's getting rid of federal regulations on water pressure.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I'm sure that'll be very wasteful, I guess.
Yep.
Speaking of just useless, dumb, hyperfixations of Trump's that he will just get on stage and talk about and to, I guess, riotous applause. Let's talk about being trans in America. Let's talk about just how fucking cool and rad, awesome,
Thank
fun
God
it is.
I'm a cis woman, dude.
Yeah. No,
that must be nice.
I'm a cis woman that just happens to have a dick and balls and M on my passport. Okay, pal?
You're so lucky. You're so lucky.
I got lucked out. I lucked out in the genetic lottery. What can I say?
On the subject of that, I kind of want to ask you what do you think about Nancy Mace?
She's really annoying. Very cringe, very annoying.
Well, and I want to expand on that because Nancy Mace to me is the latest in a but the latest in a line of very outspoken white conservative. Well, sure. No.
Cougars.
No.
Gilfs. Okay.
Yeah, we gotta cut that.
Okay.
No, but of a very specific type of middle-aged white woman that are usually depicted as being very folksy and very down home country.
Sure.
And Lauren Boebert and Marjorie Taylor Greene. And she seems to kind of be trying to really steal their thunder in a way that I don't think anybody else cares. Like you noted that she's annoying.
Chungus.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. But you noted that on Twitter and stuff she's very annoying.
She's not gaining prominence though. Because
no.
Yeah,
she, I don't know. She's quite marginal. Which honestly, the anti-trans stuff, it doesn't seem to gain that much traction outside of the sports thing. Which
I think Nancy Mace's shtick would have gone over much better for her in Kamala Harris's America. I similar to the Daily Wire, it's almost out of place now that they run everything. It serves as this odd fixation. Meanwhile, Trump's doing all these executive orders that we will slowly see more and more states and agencies try to implement over time. But they don't need Nancy Mace's shtick anymore. There's no purpose for it. And yeah, it's not catching traction. People seem riled about the sports issue, certainly.
Mostly because that's all Trump seems to really care about. Well, because obviously Trump, wheeler and dealer coke fiend in the 70s and 80s, one can assume that he's been involved with many a trans sex worker. He doesn't seem to care about.
He hasn't cared about this
women.
issue until 3 years ago.
No, and even then, he when he says it, he's like, "None of you even knew what transgender was until 6 months ago." But now, whenever I bring it up, you guys.
He's talked before about
give a shit
how much based on polarization in American politics and the unwillingness of Democrats to work with, and the unwillingness of Democrats to work with Republicans, which is a very silly thing to say, considering what his governing style is.
Well, Chuck Schumer was willing to work with him, so
yes, but Trump has said basically because the Democrats don't like me and are trying to put me in jail and blah 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 blah. Now I'm only gonna care about what my crazy supporters think, and they seem to be really riled up about this issue. So I guess I'm gonna let them have it. I will appease them because they're the only ones that are nice to me now. And that's what his position on the issue is that he's going to appease his crazy supporters who have had their brains warped by Fox News and the Daily Wire, because that's all he has left is appeasing those people at his rallies who scream about trans women in sports or whatever.
No.
Well, and it's interesting you bring up the Daily Wire, because I was going to use Nancy Mace to actually just go right into the Daily Wire, which is facing its own hardships. Who could have seen this coming when Jeremy Boring put over $1 million into their dog shit Disney Netflix competitor that barely fucking worked. Thank you, Becky.
More than a million.
Hey.
Oh yeah, it was more than $1 million. It was absolutely
millions of dollars.
Yeah. I'm crushed as a film critic. I'm crushed because it's such easy slop.
I'm so disappointed that I'll never get to see Lady Ballers 2, a film I watched, I kid you not, 4 times for work, but still, it's really sad. I'll never get to see what that post-credit stinger is gonna be followed up with.
Yeah.
But no, $100 million was spent on the Daily Wire kids entertainment spin-off company.
Get the fuck out! Was it really was it $100 million?
Bentkey, $100 million.
Jesus Christ.
And you'd think that these people would have saw the whole PragerU thing not working out and said, maybe we'll just not do that because
we're not going to get another season of Chipchilla. I'm sorry to report, fellas.
Can you
it's
not
happening.
say that? That's a bit too
fucking rough break for Rob Schneider. My God.
But yes, no, it's in some ways not surprising that these baffling financial choices have resulted in Jeremy Boring being possibly kicked out / politely stepping down from the Daily Wire CEO position. Meanwhile, his Game of Thrones ripoff show, The Pendragon Cycle, just balloons in budget as it continues to be in.
So we're not getting. We're not getting the Brett Cooper Snow White thing, which is just fucking so funny in hindsight now, because he really thought he was doing something.
It was just an ad. The one thing that I'm really disappointed about is that they have exclusive rights to adapt The Fountainhead into a prestige TV drama.
Do.
And so bad want to see Ben Shapiro's prestige TV version of The Fountainhead. And I'm so pissed that due to Jeremy's bad financial choices, I may now be robbed of Ben Shapiro's take on The Fountainhead. Because, oh my God. Whoa. It would be life-changing.
Goals in business don't mix. Boring. Not a member of my
Can you say
tribe
that?
I run. Yeah, I'm Jewish.
Okay, good for you.
She can say that. Yeah, this is another thing that I should have prefaced the beginning of this with.
God, you.
No, because she's not like, you don't talk. How do I say this without sounding racist? Never mind. Continue.
That's in the Bible. You can say that.
Yeah. I mean, a right-wing extremist expert, they would know.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
I'm really bummed about the Daily Wire Plus imploding. Imagine how much good content we would have gotten under President Kamala Harris as the Daily Wire surged amongst uproar in the conservative class for Kamala Harris stealing yet another election. They would have got so many more subscriptions, funneled so much money. We would have got Lady Ballers 2, and now the political class that relies on their victim status is doing so bad now that their friends run everything.
Well, and it goes to exactly what you were saying earlier, what you and Rosa were saying earlier about how they just don't have any targets. You know, it is not a target-rich environment, and that is really what so much of Jeremy Boring's business plans it constantly hinged on, was just like, hey, here's our non-woke chocolate, here's our non-woke comedy, and it was all
non-woke
bad.
Razors.
Yeah, fucking here's our
my nickname back in high school.
Slice your wrists with these maybe I shouldn't say that.
No, do it.
It's okay. No, we're cutting out so much of this section.
Yeah, we're cutting out so much with our anti-woke razors. I'm gonna look like Elon Musk by the end of this shit.
But it is true that there's I've kind of noticed the same thing with, I don't know how much you keep up with Alex Jones, but it is this it's so tired because all Alex Jones does now is go on air for hours and talk about how we're winning and we're putting down the globalists and they're running scared but it's that shit over and over.
And that's why
the
only way for you to be able to do that grift is by like going the Candace Owens way, going the Nick Fuentes way.
Yeah.
And just saying like the Zog or whatever, you know?
I mean, they're also, I think they're seeing more success from like these like DIY approaches, not working with this big media like alternative media company, right? With Candace off on her own now, and also like pivoting to like a degree of like entertainment, like gossip, politics as well, not just like politics which can get stale. I want to actually ask you about Candace Owens, because it seemed like she just fucked off to the ether to people who weren't paying attention, but has not only, not slowly, but like rapidly becoming far more radical, far more anti-Semitic, and far more explicit in that anti-Semitism. And I've been wondering, because you pay more attention to kind of those circles and groups, has she been growing in popularity over there? Her audience has, like, her subscriber count has grown the past few months, but that's less due to her, like, overtly political content, more due to her being, like, a Hollywood gossip columnist sometimes. So, like, you're seeing her audience grow, but it's not among, like, the overly online political, like, viewership class. She's trying to, like, just do, like, pop culture reporting as well, but with this like undercurrent of like misogyny and far right politics and anti-Semitism. So she's doing like a weird semi-pivot, and I think it still remains to be seen how that exactly is gonna like result for her. But it seems to be like doing okay right now. I
mean, the Zionist Democrats right now, and the Zionist Republicans are doing everything in their power to embolden anti-Semitism in this country by the conflation of Israel, Zionism, and Jewishness, which I would consider to be anti-Semitic. Sure. Because if we're going to conflate the critique of Jews, the critique of Israel, anti-Semitism, Holocaust denial, if we're going to put all of these things into one big blob of unacceptability and codify that into the law with the anti-Semitism bill, it just very naturally leads to conspiracism and these very far-right narratives about us, like, controlling the government or wherever the shit, or whatever the hell.
Yeah, It seems so, and Gare, I'm sure that you are completely familiar with the feeling of, like, when I see shit like Candace Owens, and I checked in on her a little while ago on stream, and she is just so pilled. Like, she is so fucking far down the pipeline of, and it's all the shit that, like, you know, moms on TikTok will be like, oh, did you know? Insert white nationalist fucking like disproven crazy
did you know
shit.
That Anne Frank's greedy father.
Yeah, like, God.
My
damn.
mom. Wait.
No, but it is straight up, and cut there and put it right here. It is straight up protocol shit. It is straight up, you know, who runs the Federal Reserve. It is straight up like they're gonna start talking about the Rothschilds and shit. And I just everybody's brain, and this is, you know, not a unique observation of mine, but it seems like everybody's brain, particularly on Twitter, particularly after this election, particularly after COVID, and very likely moving into one, if not more, future pandemics, everybody just is kind of cooked at the moment, and it's getting so much worse. Is there any meaning? So I talked to Robert Evans a couple months ago for a documentary I did on de-radicalized. Oh, he does a podcast.
No, I don't listen to those.
Okay. You should check it out. Yeah, do you know crack.com?
No, that's before my time.
Okay, yeah, you're one of the youngins.
Yeah.
But either way, I talked to Robert. I talked to Robert for this documentary on de-radicalizing white nationalists, talking to actual like former white nationalists, getting their ideas about how do you fight this shit. And one of the things that he said that really stuck with me was that fact checking doesn't work.
No.
So what the fuck do people do? I mean, as much fun as it is to own dorks on Twitter, and as much as that gives a slight dopamine rush that I think too many people are too many people are addicted to it.
Yeah.
I think you should care about your immediate family and try to help people that you already know.
Yeah.
If people are engaging in content that you think is worrying, try talking about it with them on like a very casual level. I think when available, do not cut people off, because that makes them usually adopt more extreme beliefs, but your mileage may vary on this. For some reasons, for like personal safety or mental health, you have to, and that's completely understandable, but it's something to keep in mind. And I think the only thing beyond that is get familiar with ways to defend yourself in your immediate community based on what laws there are in your state, whether that's through just self-defense, pepper spray, or possibly firearms. And I think that's all you really can do at this point. I think these old like resist lib strategies, even some like quote unquote Antifa tactics from the past like 8 years have proven to have middling rates of success. I don't think doxing Nazis even really works anymore in some ways, because they sort of have the cultural victory with the popular vote. It's allowing this like it gives them this like sense that like they truly are now the silent majority that they've always thought they were, even though they still really aren't. But they have this perception of like they have the popular mandate, and you have like Matt Walsh and JD Vance talking about how people throw around Nazi as an insult and it doesn't mean anything anymore. People throw around fascist doesn't mean anything anymore, just because they want to protect their traditional American values, like the way the country was founded. Like, so like doxing people for being Nazis, I think is honestly like a very, as a tactic, has very mixed results in this day and age. And in some ways kind of puts like a reverse target on you. I think limiting your scope to people who are like in your life, coworkers, friends, family, and then learning how to defend yourself and your and people in your community is, I think at this point, like we are at the point where those are like the only two things that I even care about.
I couldn't agree more. I think that so much of the American Antifa movement was looking at Germany's Antifa movement, which is known for not failing not succeeding, because Hitler came to fucking power and saying, yeah, well, if we just did that, well, if we just align ourselves with liberals who will always in turn stab us in the back, yada yada yada, and just repeating history first is tragedy, then is farce. I
don't know, like there's some of the modern American Antifa I think was honestly, beyond their branding, more associated with anti-racist action, and an American movement that emphasized like violence in the streets mostly, and you had like the large strains more in that vein, especially in the Pacific Northwest, and for a while, at least Portland did successfully fend off Nazis. Nazis are less likely to stroll around en masse in Portland than they were 5 years ago. So in that way, I think there is like localized efforts showed a degree of success. I don't know how much mileage those tactics are going to get now with Trump and Republicans seemingly more focused on Antifa as this terrorist group. But at least on like the doxing and intel side, I think that those have more limited applications than they used to. And like,
you can't align with stage 2 cancer against stage 4 cancer. It's never going to be politically effective.
Yeah.
So, not even pushback, but the thing I've been thinking and dedicating a lot of thought. I put out a video recently on it. The idea of protest and protesting, when we've heard from the FBI that they have recently put together
the Tesla Terrorism Task Force.
Oh boy, they put together CTU.
God, it's about time.
People
it is
TP
about time.
Goddamn Cybertrucks.
Finally, some good news.
Which is, you can sit and laugh at that and be like, well, that's dumb as shit. But then you see somebody getting federal charges for putting fucking gum on a Tesla truck.
Also, may I add, it's not worth ruining your life over something as menial as vandalizing
but here's
a fucking car.
Like the problem isn't like the incredibly fucked up skewed, well, at the core the problem is the incredibly fucked up skewed way Americans define property versus value of life. Like that's a whole separate conversation. The thing that worries me more is how quickly and in a way, I guess, kind of a lot of the critiques of Antifa have been leading Antifa and the left and protesting in the last couple of years have been leading to this.
Anti-fascism more broadly.
Yeah, more broadly in America as this like, anti-American quote unquote or terrorist or whatever words the Justice Department wants to use. But how quickly the idea of just dissent and that itself being punishable is very, like, the proximity of that to being, again, tying this into another kind of disparate idea, but it's been pointed out that so many of the kind of people who just 3-4 years ago were the anti-woke, we're talking about the SJWs are so sensitive about everything. You cannot vandalize a fucking car without offending somebody to the point where they're like, oh, this person needs to be shot, deport them, send them over here.
Sending them to El Salvador.
But seriously believing it. Like, people truly have conviction behind this shit. And I wonder, what is the, like, what does, because the weather's starting to pick up a little bit. Protests are going to increase, especially with all the shit. It's gonna be a hot summer. I hear the hottest on record.
We are getting closer and closer to the proverbial term, the cool zone. And
like the media I keep hearing about.
And I think learning to defend yourself and your friends is in part useful for when the temperature increases. And
you need a fire extinguisher in case there's a fire.
So like that, that's kind of like, I'm very limited in the way that I talk about like this sort of thing, I guess.
Fair, completely understandable. Yeah,
I did because we are seeing around the country the temperature rising. There is this populist there is this wave of populist action. I think what happened with the Luigi incident is like evidence of this. It even crosses like political divides, right? With this kind of like more like tech bro libertarian type guy, frustrated at like the insurance oligarchs and using his like gray tribe what's the term? Same thing with the one sec.
Can I say something while you're thinking?
Yeah.
Okay. Obviously, this specific topic is one that's hard to navigate with TOS and everything. But what I will say is this: propaganda of the deed is rarely effective for building a mass movement, and a large-scale protests without a specific political
goal,
aims, and a class element to them will always fail and lead to nothing. Look at what happened in Greece and Turkey right now and a month ago. These movements just lead to nothing.
Well, and that's been part of my like frustration is, again, I talked about
and that's why
this 50-51 movement where people just showed up for this protest because they heard on Instagram like, oh, there's going to be a protest, I'm going to show up. But there was no leadership. Everybody's sign was advocating for a completely different fucking
so
point.
Much of this is just virtue signaling. It's about making yourself feel good. No political goals are really met with these specific things when it comes to protesting any sort of open dictatorship.
I think we've seen after 2020 the degrees to which protesting can achieve certain small scale things locally for
Like Black
a
Lives
certain
Matter
amount
Road.
of time. But in the end, like protest as like a general tactic, it's very difficult to achieve big things with just this like umbrella term of protest. I think part of why I'm like looking at this summer as a proverbial hot summer, is we are seeing this like populist sentiment arising across political lines. If you look at like what happened in the Luigi incident, where you have this like libertarian, kind of more like tech bro-y, like rationalist guy directing his anger at insurance oligarchs in a very like rationalist self-actualization type manner of taking matters into his own hands and doing what people would consider, you know, an extremist action, and then having that action gain a fair degree of sympathy across the country. It's part of this growing like sentiment against the people who actually like run things, and like Trump and Elon are nervous about this because they are within that class themselves. They're directing the FBI towards executive protection roles, basically doing security for CEOs. And you have this Tesla, and you have the Tesla takedown protests and the series of vandalism against Teslas, I think expressing a very similar sentiment against this like oligarchic or like tech oligarchic class that is ruining / running the entire country, and people are angry about it, including people who are less likely or, you know, historically are seen as less likely to engage in extremist action. You know, these aren't like black bloc anarchists in some cases. These are like liberals who are getting very quickly, quote unquote, radicalized into action against the figure of Elon Musk, or a rationalist tech bro, right? I think it's interesting the degree to which like this like phantom of accelerationist anarchists has been largely overshadowed by middle class liberals or libertarians who are adopting you know, pretty extreme tactics to express their displeasure at the current situation. And I think this is just a sign of where things are possibly headed.
Rosa, you have something down?
So how much of that radicalization is really just waiting around for the next person to just commit some isolated, atomized act of terror, at which point the working class and the petite capitalist class will just sort of go back to this sense of waiting. It feels like a rather than a mass movement, a movement based on just a feeling of righteousness at these very small scale actions.
Well, I think it's also
I don't know if I think about things in terms of mass movements, frankly. Like I don't know if that's really what I'm forecasting or even like trying to like analyze for. I guess I am as I am looking at more of like a rapid sequence of events, and as that pace increases, how we can project trends and what that means for the temperature of the country. That's more what I'm interested in.
When you say temperature, you mean in terms of ideological conflict?
Political, ideological temperature, how much people trust the stability of the U.S. government, and the less they trust it, the more they're willing to do things that they previously would have considered extreme. And as the rate of instances increases, I think those encourage copycat instances.
When you say
it can create this like cascading effect.
When you say extreme, does that just mean like illiberal?
Outside of like outside of like what like neoliberal, you know, even, you know, like marching in the streets is typically seen as like a semi-acceptable way to do that. That is being put more into question.
Activism is the liberal way of...
But yeah, like forms of direct action, whether that be something as extreme as the shooting of a healthcare CEO like in December, or something that's or something like targeting Tesla offices for vandalism.
I do think that we're going to see a sort of American potentially American Years of Lead type scenario where the ideological factions among the bourgeoisie are waging war against themselves. And a lot of, because so much of the Luigi Mangione thing is just the petite bourgeoisie feeling sort of left behind. You know what I mean? Rather
Well,
than
I don't think
working
Luigi
for
is
the middle class.
necessarily himself petite bourgeois. His family is more well-to-do, but he was a worker. Like he was not a business owner. He was not a small business owner. He's certainly like middle class. But I guess I don't necessarily also like frame that as like forms of the bourgeois turning on each other either. The way that I'm like analyzing an instance like that, and we see some of this even with the people who are arrested allegedly for the Tesla stuff, is like people who have had an opportunity to live the good life, people who have lived with a degree of stability, and then when that either gets taken away from them or when they realize how hollow that stability is, it frees them of like this need for self-preservation, and it allows them to do things that put their own safety at risk. Whereas in some ways, I think like lower middle class or lower class people have this like dream of like eventually reaching that financial or like life stability, and that for some people it keeps that self-preservation mechanism more turned on, versus like people who've already had that and have rejected it, have had it taken away, or have realized its intrinsic hollowness, have turned towards like a violent means of handling whatever existential crisis they encounter, and that's kind of the calculus that I'm like looking at in terms of watching people adopt these tactics. But I mean that gets way more into like theory and like analysis of action than what I typically like talk about in my work, frankly.
Yeah. I don't want to get. Yeah, we're getting way too much into the weeds here, for that. But no, I appreciate that perspective.
So I guess to kind of wrap up a little bit, like we've been talking about, I think it's fair to say that as much as we can analyze and you can look at all of these different moving parts and pieces and kind of try to predict where they're going, I think it's fair to say that the volatility of the situation, whether that's the economy, whether that's, when will if there is going to be another Luigi, or on the flip side, if there's going to be another like conservative driven mass act of violence, where, when, how will it affect things? So I think it's fair to say it's a pretty intense and scary time, especially, like I said, looking at a summer where people are going to be out more, almost certainly protesting. Yeah. What kind of advice, you mentioned people being able to arm themselves, self-defense. What kind of advice do you give to people who are either looking to go to protest for the first time, who are organizing protests, who are trying to organize in their community and with mutual aid? I mean, yeah, like I am not really in a position to give people advice on protesting, I guess. As the temperature increases and we see possibly increasing levels of repression from the government, I think it's generally good practice to have a lawyer. If you don't, learn about your local National Lawyers Guild chapter. Think about digital security. Think about kind of what your surveillance threats are. Think about what you should and shouldn't use the internet for. When you should and should not have a phone. Just very, very basic stuff, regardless of what you're doing. Not even even when you're doing things that are completely legal, even when you are breaking no laws, these things are good to keep in mind, because the quote unquote law is increasingly getting stretched. We are seeing people get put into the crosshairs of the state, despite having committed no crime, and that's like the government's openly saying that. So these are all things to keep in mind.
So I guess that's kind of more what I think about. I think posting on social media at this point, unless it's your job, is pretty useless and dangerous, possibly, especially posting things of a political nature. And like it sucks. Like these sorts of things, like going to protests, should not be a risky thing, right? When you live in a neoliberal democracy, this is part of your rights. But as we approach the cool zone, as things get weirder and hotter, we have to start thinking a little bit differently. This isn't Occupy. This isn't even Ferguson. This isn't even 2020. This is a new era, and it should be treated as such, possibly with enhanced or increased thought into your own personal safety and digital security, as well as your friends. Right, you're only as strong as the weakest link in the chain.
It's such. Oh God, that was incredibly well said. And thank you, but it's such a bummer we don't have any sponsor for this episode, because you ending on digital security would have been such a great, such a great segue.
I can plug.
Yeah, let's clip the meme coin. Yeah.
I would.
Cum coin.
Yeah, hang on, I gotta repaint my ceiling really quick. Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Gare, for joining us. I should say, putting up with us today. Where can people find your work and everything you do and stay informed?
Yeah, I write for a show that comes out every day of the week, which is way too much, called It Could Happen Here. I am. We do, actually. I am a member of the Writers Guild of America. I am in a union. Cool. But my politics show is called It Could Happen Here. We're doing a weekly kind of like Trumpian news roundup episode called Executive Disorder that comes out every Friday. If you just want a single episode to keep up to date on what's happening and stuff coming out of the White House, then you can find my Yowie posts on Blue Sky at Hungry Bowtie, as well as X, the Everything app, which I am still on for some reason.
Because Blue Sky sucks, we can all admit it.
The vibe on there is odd.
I have gotten every single Blue Sky user to admit that the app sucks without fail. I am like 8 for 8.
I don't have any like Yowie on Blue Sky. No one's really funny. Jokes don't work.
One is funny. Dude,
it's people sharing other people's articles, which is sometimes good for news gathering. But honestly, like I
use it. I also use it for news gathering mostly, but also every time I go there, I find people just sharing posts from Twitter, and so
that's also but between that and the whole like 2017 to 2021 kind of like time portal that exists in terms of like people's like internet etiquette, sometimes it's a bit of a head scratcher. I think I'm just so desensitized to like the Twitter X slop that even though in some ways Twitter/X is like, you know, has like worse people, I'm just so used to dealing with it that it doesn't like hurt me the same way that like a post that could come from 2019 that pops up on Blue Sky like hurts me. Like I sent it to like a visceral reaction of like, where am I? What happened?
As a comedian, Blue Sky is like my worst nightmare. It's like the nightmare zone of just like any time I try and say anything, it's like, we don't do that here.
How many times is it just like the safe place, that the safe bubble we put everybody who still says like, well, that just happened?
Doggo Paparino.
I know where we should put those people.
In Blue Sky, on the Blue Sky machine.
In the Blue Sky.
Exactly.
Gare,
thank you again so much for joining us. Rosa, where can people find you?
You can find me wherever there's and composting. Listen to it. Thank you.
So somewhere between the Mexico and Canadian border. Thank you very much. I am, as always, Jordan Black, also known as Dead Domain. You can find my work on YouTube at Dead Domain or Twitter, where I also am, unfortunately, a slave to minor dopamine hits. And yeah, thank you all for listening, and we'll talk more about what the fuck we're doing now next time.
That's a great outro. That was I like that.
Yeah, I'm just smooth with it, you know? Yeah.
You could tell you really believed in yourself with that one.
Yeah, hey, what can I say? Some people got it, and I...
Yeah.